Week 11 of the NFL has arrived, and there should be a combination of very exciting games on paper and ones that leave quite a bit to be desired. Hopefully, it can live up to what happened in Week 10, where there were tons of one-score games and very unexpected outcomes. Welcome to my predictions and my breakdown for the Week 11 action. If you enjoy these types of videos, make sure to subscribe. I do them every single week. Let's get right into the action, starting with the Thursday night football match between the Eagles and the Commanders. We're starting off with a big one here. This game could have major implications on who wins the NFC East. It's basically just a race between these two teams right now, so this is a huge matchup. You've got the Commanders coming off a brutal loss to the Steelers, where they didn't play their greatest, but were still in the game, while the Eagles are on a massive winning streak right now and look more and more confident as the weeks go by. This will be a tough game for the Commanders. It will be a major test to see just how good they truly are. We saw them come up short when tested against the Steelers, and I don't really know if you can trust them to do any better against the Eagles. Their defense is improving, and it seems like Jalen Hurts has truly limited his mistakes from earlier in the season, looking more like that former MVP candidate back in 2022. Eagles look like they're primed to rip off a major winning streak, and they're definitely the better team on paper compared to the Commanders, but based on vibes, I'm actually going with Washington to win this game. It makes absolutely no sense, but it's just a gut feeling at the end of the day. The Eagles, I think, in a lot of places are better. I mean, they're at home, they have the tougher roster, and genuinely, they're a lot more battle-tested when it comes to divisional matchups. The Commanders are very young and inexperienced in that aspect, outside of some meaningless games against the bum Giants. But it goes both ways, as we don't know what Jaden Daniels is capable of in the big-time matches against the division. He may live up to it and play out of his mind. He may be ready for this type of test. You can't say for certain, as he's a rookie, and this Washington team has been very unpredictable. The Eagles, on the other hand, I feel like they're still kind of on fraud watch. They've been playing a lot better recently, and they deserve their credit. But when they've actually been battle-tested this year, they haven't played all that great, in my honest opinion. In that game against the Bucs, they got blown out. They lost a tough one to the Falcons. I feel like the Commanders overall have looked better in those tough losses to some of the best competition this league has to offer. I don't trust the Eagles completely right now, and the Commanders love to play this Eagles team close, and I think now that they have a better quarterback at their disposal, that just may push them over the edge. Alright, I yapped up enough of a storm with that Eagles-Washington game. Let's talk about an NFC North divisional game now on the 1 p.m. Sunday slot, that being the Packers versus the Bears. Now, just seeing how the Bears have played recently, that's more than enough reason to think alone that the Packers should win this game with relative ease. That Bears offense is struggling big time. Caleb cannot stay on his feet. He's holding onto the ball too long as well. And if he can't beat the freaking Patriots, if he can't put up more than 3 points against those guys, what chance does he have against Green Bay? Not to mention that the Packers in recent memory have absolutely owned the Bears. It hasn't even been close. And with where the Bears are at right now, that trend should very easily continue. Packers definitely bounce back with a big win this week. And then you've got the Jaguars taking on the Lions. Now, interesting trend that I wasn't aware of last week that's been brought to my attention is that Trevor Lawrence may be out for the foreseeable future. He may even miss the rest of this season. And if that's the case, this team especially doesn't stand a chance against the Lions. Even under ordinary circumstances, you'd expect them to lose. But with Mac Jones out there, this game shouldn't even be close. I give their defense some credit for playing well against the Vikings last weekend, but this is an entirely different beast. There's no way the Lions will play nearly as bad as they did against Houston, and they should cruise to a pretty comfortable win here. The Jags are just nowhere close to them. Lions have won like a million in a row at this point. Maybe they're overdue for a loss, but it's definitely not going to come against these guys. Speaking of the Vikings, they're actually up next playing the Tennessee Titans. And while I don't think the Vikings will lose this game, I'm a bit concerned that it'll be closer than it actually should be. Sam Darnold hasn't been playing as great in recent weeks. Not as impressive. The league's starting to figure him out. He's making more mistakes. And he's playing a Tennessee defense that has played a lot of teams relatively tough this year. We could see another ugly Sam Darnold match that just further implicates that the Vikings really are not as good as they once were at the beginning of this season. I still think they're going to win at the end of the day because the Titans are sending out freaking Mayo Man. That's all you need to know. If Will Levis is the QB, this team doesn't stand a chance in hell. but with how Darnold is playing right now, Vikings will win it way more uncomfortably than they actually should. And then you've got the Vegas Raiders coming off a bye, taking on the Dolphins, who just got a big win over the LA Rams. Now, the one thing I'll say about the Dolphins is that they didn't exactly impress that much in that Rams game. It felt more to me like the Rams consistently shot themselves in the foot. And as a result, I wouldn't trust this Dolphins team to go on a big winning streak, and they definitely have it in them to lose this game against Vegas. But because of how bad the Raiders are right now, I don't think you could reasonably pick them to win like any games on their schedule right now. So I will pick the Dolphins just because they're way less of a disaster on paper, and there's still room for their offense to get better. Tyreek Hill hasn't done anything since like week 1. He's overdue for a big match. The Raiders are garbage. Dolphins offense should be on the field a lot, just knowing how bad the Raiders QB situation is, and that should be it. Up next, you have the LA Rams versus the New England Patriots. The Patriots go out and surprise me, getting another win added to their belts, absolutely blowing out the Bears. That game was not even close. Big feel-good win knowing that they drafted Drake May 2 picks after the Bears got Caleb Williams. That's a good way to laugh in their faces and start off this young player's career. But now he's taking out a Rams team that is significantly more competent. The good news is they aren't all that impressive defensively, although their pass rush was pretty lethal against Miami. It felt like Tua was on the ground quite a bit, and the Patriots' O-line isn't the best, and that may be all it takes for this Rams team to take advantage and win a somewhat tight game. I think the Patriots simply get outclassed on that war of attrition up front, and offensively, they're just not going to be as consistent as Matt Stafford and the Rams. They didn't play a great game against the Dolphins, but they'll clean it up knowing all the weapons they have. The Patriots are significantly worse. They should take advantage and get a relatively easy win to get right back in the race in their division and potentially clinching a playoff spot. Moving on, the Browns are taking on the Saints. This one is interesting. I feel like it's either going to be an absolutely horrendous game where both teams just can't stop turning the ball over, or it's going to be a high-scoring affair and be one of the sneaky best games of the week. I can't make up my mind on which way this one goes. You have the Saints, who are building some momentum. They just stopped the losing streak. They beat a divisional rival. Seems like all is well despite the injuries, but they're playing a Browns team that is so mysterious. Jameis Winston 1 week looks like a god, then the next he's terrible. What version of him are we going to get? Is he going to ball out against his former team? There's so many questions in this one. Neither are all that consistent. They don't have all of their main weapons at their disposal, either because they traded them away or they're hurt. It's a tough game to toss up here, but I don't know how much I can reasonably trust Jameis Winston on a week-to-week basis. It absolutely bit me in that game against the Chargers, and while the Saints defense isn't nearly as good as LA's, I think just knowing Jameis's history that it'd be better for me to pick the Saints. I don't say this with much confidence, but I think New Orleans are slightly more trustworthy as they're still fighting more for their season, it feels like, and Jameis on the other side in a hostile environment is bound to make some bad mistakes. And then you have the Colts versus the Jets. Okay, Jets, you just got blown out by the Cardinals. I thought that game would be a lot closer than what it was, but you guys showed me y'all still have a long way to go. They just can't score consistently, man. It is terrible to watch. Aaron Rodgers has all the weapons in the world at his disposal, but they can't find the freaking end zone. It is to the point where it's difficult to feel confident even against winnable opponents like the Indianapolis Colts, who just so happen to have a better record than them. This is the kind of game the Jets should win, but at this point, it's hard to say if you can trust them to pull it off. With how inconsistent they've been, with how much of a mess they feel internally, every game feels losable at this point. But I don't know if I can trust the Colts to pull this off, as they're not in that much of a better situation. They played hard against the Bills, but that game probably shouldn't have been as close as it actually was for a while. The Jets, I believe, should be able to execute and get this W. I don't know, man. I don't like this game much at all, and I would not bet on it. That much is for sure. It is hard to say what version of the Jets and the Colts you will get. It might be a disaster class type of matchup, but I trust the Jets slightly more to win than a Colts team that is lacking any real direction right now. Now for, well, hopefully a better game between the Ravens and the Steelers, the battle of the AFC North. Both of these teams have been fantastic this year. The Steelers with Russell Wilson are on a huge winning streak. They just got a big win over Washington to show how legit they are, and they're playing a Ravens team that has 2 MVP level candidates on it with Derrick Henry and Lamar, just coming off of a big win against the Bengals. Both teams are riding a big high. These are bitter rivals. They always play each other close, and it is going to be a toss-up. The Steelers may have a slight advantage since they're at home, but that Russ magic is bound to wear off eventually, just knowing how late he is into his career, right? Will he be able to do it again and keep up with the likes of Lamar? Well, maybe the Steelers defense can keep them in it. I'm a bit worried about Highsmith after rolling his ankle in that game against the Commanders, but in general, they still are a lethal defense. They made Jaden Daniels struggle a lot. And Lamar, we've seen him have some ups and downs with this Steelers team. The Steelers probably play them harder than any other team in that division. They seem to have their number quite a bit as well. Honestly, I think I'm going to go with the Steelers to pull off this upset. I think I just psyched myself into doing it. While the Ravens are the better team, I don't like how much trouble they usually have with the Steelers. They like to split with those guys or even lose both matchups quite a bit, even with Lamar out there. But on top of it all, again, the Ravens sometimes just have those weird games where they lose for no reason. Seemed like it might happen in that Bengals matchup, but they were lucky to survive in the end. So in my eyes, that means that this week things are going to go in the opposite direction, and this time they won't catch a lucky break. The Ravens secondary has not been impressive. Russell Wilson's been rolling, and I think he will do enough to win this game, while the Steelers defense does just enough to keep the Ravens in check. Now we go back to more boring action, the Falcons versus the Broncos. Oddly, this game feels like a toss-up. The Falcons did not play their greatest matchup against the Saints. That was a tough one to lose, and they're playing a Broncos team that probably should have beaten the Chiefs if it weren't for some voodoo magic field goal blocking. This Denver team has shown us, despite them being young, that they can compete. That defense will keep them in matches very consistently. And against the Falcons, who sometimes have their downs with Kirk Cousins, this could be a big game for the Broncos. Bo Nix, if he can get the job done, if he can execute, that should be enough for them to win. But I don't know if I trust it. He is a young quarterback. This Broncos team doesn't play well on a week-to-week basis, and I can't see a world where Atlanta go on a losing streak and give up that lead in their division. That was a tough loss to the Saints, but divisional battles go that way sometimes. I think they will bounce back and eventually have their way. It might be low scoring, but I trust in Kirk and the boys more to execute over time. The run game, they've been getting it going a lot with Bijan. I think they'll find some kind of opening, although it may not be until the fourth quarter. And to continue on the trend of divisional games, the Seattle Seahawks are taking on the San Francisco 49ers. These two already met each other once, and it went in the Niners' favor, and that was without Christian McCaffrey. Now that he's back, it could be a big problem for this Seattle team. I know McCaffrey wasn't the greatest in his first week back, but obviously they're trying to reincorporate him and increase his workload by the week, and that could be a problem for Seattle here in his second week. He could be overdue for a massive game. And just the fact that the Niners are healthier than they used to be also makes me think that they're probably going to come out on top in this one. They've just been better than Seattle. They always seem to have their number in these divisional games under Geno Smith. And unfortunately, the Seahawks are just too inconsistent to be seen as trustworthy. One week, they can blow out a competitive team like the Falcons. Then the next, they're getting destroyed by Buffalo. You never know what version of Seattle you're going to get. While the Niners, I feel like, are starting to hone things in and be like their normal selves, I can't go against them, especially at home. Then, to end the 4 p.m. games, the Chiefs are playing the Buffalo Bills. The rivalry continues. The new Manning-Brady almost, it feels like in a way. It has that type of weight to it. Mahomes versus Josh Allen. This one's exciting. Arguably the game of the week, or at least one of the ones you'll pay the most attention to. Bitter rivals going head-to-head once again. The Chiefs are looking to improve to a whopping 10-0, but in their way is a Buffalo team that feels a lot different than they once were before. They're rolling. They look like one of the top teams in the conference, if not the NFL. This should be a giga-banger. And usually this matchup would favor the Chiefs, at least historically. They've got that going for them, but they are on the road in a hostile environment. And even though they are currently 9-0, a lot of these games have been extremely close, like way too close for comfort. They've narrowly won so many games on their schedule by the skin of their teeth, and if just one little thing goes differently, this team could be like 500 right now. It's insane how great their late game execution has been. Again, it feels like freaking voodoo magic at this point, like this is the team of destiny almost. But surely they can't keep getting away with it, right? They can't keep barely getting by the skin of their teeth in these games and these one-possession matchups. One of these surely has to go the other way, and that is why I'm picking the Bills to win this match. This is one of the only games left on the schedule where it feels like they have a great chance of losing. If it's not the Bills, then who will it be at this point? I think Buffalo are looking forward to this one. They're ready for that revenge game after the playoffs last year. They beat them in the regular season last year, so why not again, right? Especially with how their offense has changed. With Josh Allen, who hasn't been making a lot of mistakes like his normal self, he seems pretty locked in, and I think he's going to go hard at the Chiefs and win this game. They always play close matches, but I refuse to believe they keep going the Chiefs' way. Maybe I'm just coping, but I like Buffalo to win this one. Then for a Sunday night matchup, the Cincinnati Bengals are playing the LA Chargers, and this one's challenging, as the Chargers defense has been pretty solid recently. They just put up another great performance against the Titans, but they're playing a high-octane Bengals offense. What happens when these two forces collide? Will the Bengals struggle out of the gates like we've seen them do at times? Or will they look like they did in that Baltimore game, where points were just flying off the shelf? The Chargers, if they want to win this game, will need to have an excellent defensive game plan. They cannot let this game get too high scoring, or they do not stand a chance. Their offense is not built for those situations. This feels like a 50-50 right down the middle, but I actually favor the Bengals by a little bit in this matchup for a couple of reasons. First and foremost, while the Chargers defense has been on the elite side of things, I feel like a lot of the opponents they've faced don't have the greatest offense. This will be their toughest challenge to date, and I don't know if they'll be able to handle it. I don't know if they can keep this game within reason forever, and a lot of that is because that Bengals offense is rolling right now. Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase look absolutely unstoppable, and at the end of the day, this Bengals team is in desperate need of a win. This team is playing with so much desperation at this point in their season, with it being on the line, that I just can't see them losing this game. I can't see them falling to, what would their record be at this point? 4-7? I just don't see it. This team is too talented. Their offense has been playing too well. They will not let this game slip away from them. Anyway, to finish things up, seeing as we have multiple teams on a bye, in the Monday night showcase, the Texans are playing the Cowboys in the Battle of Texas. Now, under ordinary circumstances, perhaps in an earlier season, this would be a fun game to watch, but as it just so happens, the Cowboys stink this year, and now Dak Prescott is out for the season, which means they don't stand a chance in hell of beating this Texans team. Even if Houston are beatable on paper, with where the Cowboys are right now, their season's done. You saw how lifeless that team was in the Philly game. Realistically, things can get better as they get Cooper Rush or I guess Trey Lance more playtime, but neither of them really inspire all that much confidence. Cooper Rush couldn't even get 100 yards in that game against Philly. They don't have a run game either to rely on. This team is terrible. They are ready for this season to end. And while I'm interested to see how Micah Parsons does and how he could maybe make CJ Stroud's life a nightmare because that O-line hasn't been great, eventually the Texans will win this game, right? They're just in a way better situation and they're still fighting for something. I'm not all that impressed with Houston this year. They're very vulnerable, but against Dallas, there's no reason to even be remotely concerned. Should be a really boring Monday night primetime game, whether it's because the Texans play sloppily or the Cowboys can't keep up. But that's going to do it for my predictions for Week 11 of the NFL season. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below, what games you're looking forward to, what your preds are, and what your best bets are for the week. And if you enjoyed this video and you want more NFL predictions like this every single week, be sure to give the video a like and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Peace out.